Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest podcast. Happy to bring you kind of our new adventure here. We're calling this the Stage Racing Podcast. My name is Adam Pace, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Cody St. John. Cody, you doing all right tonight?
Yeah, doing great. Happy to be here and happy to get this thing that we've been talking about for quite some time off the
We've,
ground.
we've
So,
been talking about it for probably going on almost 2 years now at this point. So,
yeah,
just a little history about us. Cody and I kind of go back to high school. Is where we kind of knew each other. I'll kind of set the scene. You tell me if I'm accurate in this. I don't think I've ever actually told you this, so let's see where it is. Then we had a lot of mutual friends in high school, right? Like you
yep,
and I weren't very close in high school, but
no,
I will say this. Cody, you're an avid UVA fan, University of Virginia fan. I'm an avid Virginia Tech fan. At the high school that we went to, I think it's fair to say you probably viewed me the same way I viewed you. And it's like this. That's that guy that likes the school that I don't like, but I respect him because his level of fandom is on the same level that mine's at. Is that fair?
yeah, I would say so. And it always had to be the one of probably the only UVA fans in the entire high school.
Yeah.
You're repping that, once a year mainly for football season, and
Yeah.
of course we lost a bunch of years, all the years I was in high school, of course. So. I think
The
'07
team
might have
was
been
the overall team was better then though. Like I'll give you that.
they were so. But yeah, definitely respected you and a couple of other Tech fans. Some people were just bandwagon,
Yeah.
because you
Well,
guys were really good during that time. So
yeah. Maybe one day. Maybe we'll both get back to how we were playing at that point. I think we both would take just like a quarter of that at this point.
yeah, I mean, I
That's a
think at this point,
yeah,
8 to 9 wins a year would be great.
that's a different podcast for another day.
Yeah,
So let's talk about this. So really, I guess it's been almost 3 years now. We kind of reconnected. I mean, we'd always been friends through social media, definitely love of sports, commenting on each other's stuff here and there. But I would say almost 3 years now, a lot of our mutual friends decided to get together for a golf trip. And so that spurred the good old golf trip group chat. And from there, we just kind of really struck it up. And honestly, I would say probably over the last like year and a half, our friendship's definitely grown. I mean, for sure.
oh,
From where, I mean, night and day from where it was.
without question. I mean,
Yeah,
we're sending reels back and forth. We're, texting about, the NIL and college football. We're texting. We've been talking about NASCAR for, I mean, it feels like every week,
yeah,
for 3 years.
yeah, pretty much.
So of course we took in, the Xfinity race last fall. We took in well, not the Xfinity race last fall, but we took in the Xfinity race in the spring, and
Yep.
then the Cup Series in the
Couple
spring,
races.
and
Yep.
yeah, then we took in the Cup Series in the fall. So we're, you know, we're just
So
like I said, it's grown.
let me throw this. I can't believe I didn't mention this. Cody and I are from Martinsville, Virginia, folks. If you're listening to this, you're obviously a NASCAR fan to some extent. So Martinsville, Virginia, the paperclip, the oldest running track now on the NASCAR circuit, unless maybe you count Bowman Gray. I don't know if that
It's
one
not
counts.
it's
No,
not
no.
official yet. It's not a
Yeah,
points race.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know
that's a
if you can
count.
count that one yet or not. But so our love, people from this area, Martinsville, Henry County, I would say it's a love-hate relationship with NASCAR. You either love it or you hate it. I've rarely found someone who's in between, because it's kind of like this. This town is so small. If we didn't have the racetrack, I mean, this area was really built on the furniture industrial backbone, and then when all that left in the mid to late '90s, the racetracks what really kept this place afloat. And so I tell people all the time who get upset with NASCAR coming into town and the traffic that it causes, because God forbid we have 2 days out of 365 where there's traffic in this town. It's like you gotta be happy they're here because they're not. Like you say, we don't have anything now. Imagine what it would be if that wasn't around. So,
Yep.
but anyways, let's jump into this. So where this kind of started, and we've alluded to it some. We both just like NASCAR. Like we both really love it, and so we just wanted a place to kind of come and vent. Honestly, who knows how many people will ever really listen to this? I don't really care. I just need somewhere to vent. I think you're kind of in the same boat as me.
100%.
Yeah, we're both dads. We just need time to get on here, let it out, because our wives probably could care less about what we talk about NASCAR. Our kids are too young to fully understand it yet, although
Yep.
my middle one's starting to catch on a little bit. But yeah, that's just kind of where it came from. So how we're going to do this podcast is it's called Stage Race. stages were introduced in NASCAR, what, like the mid 2010s or something like that. I probably should have done that research before we got on
Yeah,
here, but
I want to say like 2012.
yeah, I know it's a hit or miss whether you like it or not. Me personally, I do because it's a guaranteed bathroom break at some point if you're at the race. So when the drinks are cold, the bladder gets small is usually what happens. So
That's right.
it's a chance to use the restroom there. But we're going to break it into three segments, three stages each week. And then maybe for the Coke 600, since that one's four stages, maybe we just add a fourth stage for that week. How about that? So let's start with this, and I'll start with you, Cody. For stage one here, we're going to kind of talk about, besides living in Martinsville, Virginia, although I know that played a lot into it, what really made you fall in love with NASCAR?
Yeah, so um, growing up at a young age, mid to late '90s, um, my dad was big into NASCAR, and so he got me into it. We used to go to the truck races all the time in Martinsville. I don't even remember ever really missing one when I was young. Um, you know, I remember going to my first Cup race. I'm pretty sure that was in '01. I'm pretty sure. Um, but like you said, being from Martinsville, that's really it's born into you. Like I wasn't born in Martinsville, of course, but just being from there, it's in your blood. Um, but my dad really got me into it. I'll never forget first time. I was a Rainbow Warrior. I was a huge Jeff Gordon fan. Uh, so I remember seeing that 24 DuPont Chevrolet, and
Couldn't miss
uh,
it.
yeah, you couldn't miss it. And I think the biggest thing too, for me was growing up in that really good rivalry of Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon, and seeing them go toe to toe. And I mean, as well as I do, Jeff Gordon fans didn't like Dale Earnhardt fans. Dale Earnhardt fans didn't like Jeff Gordon fans. And it's funny now because when you watch the documentaries, you see all the things. They were close. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they,
Mm-hmm.
and Jeff looked at Dale as sort of a mentor. And so it's really cool to look back on that and see that now. But yeah, I mean, just watching Jeff and being an avid fan and him winning all those races. I mean, he won 13 in '98. I'm pretty sure he won 10 or 12 the year before in '97. Um, and then, it's just, you fall in love with a sport, that is really beginning to peak in the late '90s, and fall in love with, really the best in the sport at the time. So it really just kind of helped take my avid, fan self, just to, you know, new heights. And I mean, honestly, I could say I probably enjoyed NASCAR as much, if not more, than any other sport at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think for me it's similar. I say try not to involve Martinsville Speedway, but for me, I'm kind of a disadvantage at that. I think growing up, you were here, and I lived in Ridgeway. And for folks who don't know the area, Martinsville Speedway is actually in Ridgeway. You just, like many other tracks, it's named after the biggest city that it's around. The racetrack was within walking distance of my house if you wanted to walk it. I mean, it's a good walk, but it's technically walking distance because I've done it before. But it was an added thing for me because my uncle and Clay Campbell, president of Martinsville Speedway, were best friends since they were kids. I mean, we're talking grade school. And so, my uncle grew up at that racetrack. And so, as I'm growing up, when and my family's close, like my cousins, my uncles, everything, when we were growing up, I consider my cousins siblings. That's how close we were. And so, when we're at family events, if it's Sunday, I mean, even to this day, if it's Sunday, the race is on. Like, it trumps NFL, it trumps, all, like, the race is on. And so we would sit and watch the race. And so that's just kind of what got me into it. Growing up, I was a Bill Elliott fan. You're probably like, what the heck, Adam? Because of who I like now, right? And that whole little rivalry. But yeah, and so just kind of fell in love with Bill Elliott, probably just because he was the McDonald's car, honestly, more than anything. And what kid didn't love McDonald's, especially in the '90s? But yeah, I mean, I was sitting here trying to think what my first race was that I went to. And I don't know if I remember my exact first one, what year it was. It definitely was before 2001 because Dale Earnhardt was still alive at the first one. But with my uncle being friends with Clay, we had some advantages. And I don't know if you remember this, but in the '90s and early 2000s, the backstretch seats over at the Speedway were first come, first serve, general admission.
Yep.
So we kind of played our we know the guy card around here, and so we could get in over there at like 30 minutes before everyone else and pick out our seats. And so yeah, I can just remember going to that, man, and it's just like race events back then are just different than they were now. It was just so much to it from a crowd standpoint. I think is what attracted me more. I mean, I still tell people to this day, I go to NASCAR races 65% to watch the race. The rest of us to people watch. I love to people watch personally, and you see some things at NASCAR races
Yeah.
as we both know. And so, yeah, man, I can remember the first one, just like the colors, the sounds, you feel
Smells.
the smells. You feel the cars like in your chest when they go by, like it's crazy. And then I can remember the first Cup race I went to. Joe Nemechek was on the pole, front row Joe, and he used to drive that Bell South car, the blue, the orange, the yellow, like it all just like it sticks out when I think of it. And so yeah, there's just some of my earliest memories going there. And then over the years, I've been blessed to go to a night race at Bristol a couple of times, which is on your bucket list, I know for sure.
Yeah, gotta
But
get there.
really, up until this past year, that was just the only two tracks I'd ever been to. And then we were lucky enough, a mutual friend that we have got us some tickets for the Coast 600 this past year, which was an absolute banger until Mother Nature decided to ruin it, and kind of ruined the whole night for us. But
It
yeah,
was getting good too. It
yeah,
was getting that last segment was going to be good.
exactly. I'll ask you one more thing before we close this one out. Favorite Martinsville Speedway memory? I have a guess of
So
what
I was
yours
going to
might be.
ask. So I was going to ask you the same question, and I thought you might want to ask this one anyway, because like I said, I was going to ask you too. My favorite memory. I'm going to give you two
Okay.
because I think you already know the one. Jeff Gordon's last race in Martinsville, the iconic Matt Kenseth.
And you know what's
Uh,
crazy? And not to
what's,
interrupt you too
yeah,
much. That's the only Martinsville race I haven't been to in the last like 15 years. Was that one? I mean, I
why
had
did you
my
have to
reasons.
miss
I
that
won't
one?
go into my reasons for that.
Yeah,
I had a priority that day that trumped that. But it was just like I'm like, are you kidding me? Like the
I,
craziest race since
yep.
I can
And
remember happening sitting on the couch.
I don't remember one in my time being crazier than that one, other than maybe this past fall with the whole conspiracy stuff, and
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll get into that at another point. But I would say that's probably my number one. Joey dominated that race. Gordon had no shot. Nobody had a shot beating Joey
Yeah.
that day. I mean, Joey was primed and ready to go win that chip in
Oh, for
Homestead
sure.
that year. But
Was it an even
he
year?
roughed.
Was it an even year? I really wonder because he's the even year guy. I need to go back and look that up. Was
I'd
that
have to go back. I'd have to go back and look at
2016?
my ticket stubs. I think it was 2015. It was 2015
Okay.
because Gordon should have won the championship in 2014. Unfortunately, that was his last really good
Okay.
season,
I was
and
just
then
curious.
2015
You know,
was his last.
the whole Logano even year thing, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna talk about Logano right now. We'll have plenty of time for that at
Oh,
another
for sure,
another
for
segment.
sure. And then what was
But
your
yeah,
other one?
that's probably my favorite. My other one is when Gordon came back from 3 laps down to win the Martinsville race. I can't remember the year specifically, but I'll never forget that race. I'll never forget sitting there, and was thinking to myself, when he went a lap down, I was like, great, like okay, it's gonna be the kind of day. He went 2 laps down. He went 3 laps down. I'm like, well, I just sat there miserable until he got one back. He got the lucky dog, and then he
Yeah.
got another one back, and then I think he got the last one back on his own. And then eventually just worked his way back through that entire field, and did some pit stops and ran some strategy, and he got back and won it. So those are my two favorite moments from Martinsville. What's yours?
Man, I sit here trying to think about it. I think one is before I even went to a race there, and I saw a clip on it today. And every time I think of Martinsville and I think lit, I always think of this one. I remember I had a soccer game that day, and I remember how hot it was. I'm going to tip you off there. How it was. Take a guess.
Oh, um,
Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd in
what he
'96
had.
when he
Yep,
had the helmet issue for the coolant system.
yep.
I didn't realize it, Toss. He had second degree burns
Burns.
from that race. It's just crazy. Like I can vividly remember watching that one on the TV, and they're interviewing him, and he's laying down, he's getting
Sitting against
medical
the car.
treatment. Yeah, and so I vividly, like, I really remember that one. I think In person, I haven't told my allegiance on here yet, but not to scare people off, I'm a Denny Hamlin fan. Um, been a Denny fan before he was public enemy number one, for what he did in Martinsville. Actually, put him on that by wrecking Chase Elliott. I was at that race. That one, that's definitely a high memory, for that one, because I was going crazy. I thought it was great. I'm sitting here like, oh man, that's something Earnhardt, all them boys would have done back in the day. Now everyone gets mad about it. I'm like, come on, man, y'all were cheering for this 20 years ago. What happened? And so, but no, I think honestly, I think the one I think of, one I went to, I don't think I appreciated it as much at the time, but looking back on it now, was when Dale Earnhardt Jr. won. Finally won at Martinsville. I remember going to that race, and I was never too big on the Earnhardt family growing up, honestly. Just didn't really have it. But I got a lot bigger respect for Junior now than I probably did then. So when you look back on it, you're like, yeah, man, that was a pretty cool story that day.
Yep, yep. I remember that day too, and he was with Hendrick then too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So having that respect for Hendrick Motorsports, and Rick did a lot for Junior, and made Junior a lot more likable, in my opinion. Really just kind of spruced him up a little bit. And
Yeah, and I can remember that race. So I actually showed up late to that race because I was playing flag football in a league, and like they always canceled, didn't do the games on race weekend. But for whatever reason that year they did. And so I can remember playing our game. We go over to the race. We get there late, but it was a great crowd that day, and no one left. But I mean, Junior's sitting there like winning the race, like everyone's sticking around. And I just remember how crazy it was. And even though my driver didn't win, it was pretty cool to watch it. It was like, all right, he actually did it. Kudos to him. It was a pretty cool moment for sure.
It's not a lot of things that I'll say this as a NASCAR fan. There's not a lot of things that live up to the hype or match the energy of a NASCAR race with an Earnhardt winning.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something different about it, and it's not something we've really seen still since Junior retired. But I mean, us watching clips as we grew up and seeing the later years of Earnhardt and seeing all years of Junior, it's not much that really matched that energy in my opinion.
So one more, just to close this one out. You think of Martinsville Speedway, favorite car you've ever seen race there? Because they race a lot. Because you got trucks, you've got Xfinity,
you got late models,
you get modifieds. This year we got the Mazda Miatas, and I'm gonna spoil it. That's been my favorite thing I've ever watched race there. No, they're not going that fast. Yes, it sounds like 10,000 bumblebees in your ears the whole time. But I remember texting you. I'm like, dude, this is the craziest race I've ever seen over here. There were so many comers and goers in that race. And then they were doing like NASCAR rules with it too, with the chews and restacking these cars up. And these guys are just driving insane. I mean, it was crazy. It was honestly, since they've switched to these new cars. And that's a whole other topic for another day. But that's the best racing I've seen there in a very long time, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think overall, though, my favorite to watch there is the modifieds. Those open wheel modifieds at Martinsville, they go so fast around that track. It's unreal.
And I've yet to see those. That's one race I've always wanted to see there. I remember me and a couple buddies years ago talking about, like, hey, they want to go see the modifieds, and I, was going to get tickets and ended up not being able to do it. I'm probably going to say cars that I've watched. Trucks are always great. Let's be fair. Trucks are always great in Martinsville. But the last couple of Xfinity races there have been excellent. Now, Eric Almirola dominated a lot of the one me and you went to. But the one before that fall before, I remember me and you were texting the entire time.
And see, what's crazy with that one is John Hunter Nemechek dominated that one, but the action throughout the rest of the field was just unbelievable, man.
That ending was pure cinema with, I think it was Austin Hill and so it was fantastic. But
it was crazy. Now,
I would say that
about Martinsville. You can't help but mention, I know you weren't at it. I was. So let's just address the craziest Martinsville moment, address the elephant in the room, the Ross Chastain, Hell Mellon. I've told you this. I tell everyone this. As fake as it looked on TV, it looked even faker in real life. I'm not kidding. I have never thought we lived in a Matrix until that day. The way that car was bouncing off that wall as a kid, it just looked like it was glitching, man. Like, it was just the strangest thing ever. And that particular race, I bought a ticket the night before off StubHub, and usually I have free tickets come my way from just various things. But for whatever reason that year I didn't, so I bought one really cheap on StubHub. Actually, ended up sitting beside the guy I bought it from. We kind of bond over college football. He was a fan of another ACC school. I just remember turning around and looking at him. Both of our jaws are like almost on the floor because we're like, did that really just happen? And yeah, as wild as it was on TV, 10 times wilder in person. Never seen anything like that. Never will see anything like that. It's the craziest thing for sure.
Can't even imagine being in person and seeing that.
It was nuts, man. It was nuts. So let's move on to the second stage. Let's talk about the Clash this weekend. I was impressed. I mean, I'm texting you Saturday night. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, but turn on these heat races, these qualifiers, because this is phenomenal.
Yep, and Heat 1 was fantastic. Heat 2 was...
These guys are beating, they're banging, and it's better than, they beat and banged at the Coliseum, but it's different. The Coliseum was that hairpin turn. The only way you could pass was just to mow through somebody, where this one,
you got to roll through the center of the corner. Exactly. You got to use the front bumper on that rear, and the high line. Let's talk about that. The high line was fantastic.
I remember we're sitting there watching. You text me, he's like, "Is the high line actually working?" I'm like, "It is to an extent. We're just getting blown by. You could hold your own, and if you had a strong enough car, you could pass on the top." Yeah, that was it for the heat races. Were way better than I was expecting, and then the last chance qualifier was wild because you got Kyle Larson. He's struggling, and then he's got to work his way up. His car really wasn't all that good, and then all of a sudden he just turns it on. He's going there. He's mowing people over. You got Ty Gibbs running into people, wheel hopping, going through the air. I know you've never been to Bowman Gray, but I'm sitting there watching that last chance qualifier. I'm like, man, this is pretty close to what a Saturday night at Bowman Gray is like.
And the madhouse.
And the thing is, I know they wanted to show crowd shots, but you can't show too many crowd shots at Bowman Gray on national television because they're always showing somebody who's number one.
That's true. But let me get into a topic.
For years, I want to take my kids down there, especially as they're getting into it. But I'm afraid they're going to come back with hand gestures that they don't use right now because it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm gonna track back a little bit to the camera. And this is once again another topic for another segment. But Fox is so bad. With the camera angles, they've been so conditioned to make the close-ups of the cars. So, they're only catching the bottom couple rows, so that looks like the tracks are filled over the last few years. When they would pan out and show that crowd of 17,000 people, it was fantastic.
It was phenomenal. So, look, I haven't seen a crowd at a sporting event like that in forever. Look, talk about Virginia Tech. I go to all the Virginia Tech home football games. all of them were sold out this year. Phenomenal crowds. I hadn't seen a crowd like that.
Yeah.
And way before COVID. Way before COVID.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the way that stadium is built, you're on top of it. But it was just they're into it. They're waving their hands. They're going crazy. Of course, Denny gets passed by Chase. Everyone loses their mind there. It was nuts, man. It was great. It made you step back and kind of feel like you were a kid again watching a NASCAR race, is what it did.
It really did. And I think it was just so great to see the fans and see all the energy that, not North Wilkesboro, sorry, I was thinking about them too, but but Bowman Gray, those fans always come out, whether it's a Wheeling Modified, whether it's, anything. They show out for every race that is on that track. And, I think enough people are talking about it right now that I'm hoping that, I think you have both texted back and forth about it. We're hoping they're going to come back next year for
They got to do something there. They got to do something.
They do.
I don't know if they do the Clash because I feel like they're wanting to move it around, which is okay. Yep. But I would say one thing they've learned, maybe it's okay to reinvest in some of these places where the people are coming out and it just needs a little TLC to take it, that one step further to keep it going. Look, Bowman Gray's not closing down anytime soon. That place stays packed. I could sit here and tell some Bowman Gray stories, and I'm going to save it because our goal this summer is to get you to a Bowman Gray race, and when we do that, I'll save some of my people watching stories from Bowman Gray the first time I was ever there. But yeah, if NASCAR wants to be the organization that they say that they are, man, this is a perfect chance to prove it. you've brought North Wilkesboro back. Bowman Gray has always been there, but it's back on the map. Rockingham's coming through it now. Some of that has to do with some of the spending bills that the state of North Carolina passed, but man, I mean, there's all these regional tracks. You could even get somewhere warmer. I mean, let's face it, we got lucky this weekend. You and I both live in Virginia. We're not that far from Winston-Salem. The fact that it's February and it wasn't just stupid. I mean, it was cold that night, but it wasn't stupid cold or raining.
Mid 50s.
Or raining.
Yep.
Was a miracle in itself. So it's like, okay, hey, I'm sure there's some places in Georgia and Florida that some hometown tracks down there that they could work this. Even South Carolina. That they could do it. So NASCAR's found a formula. Whether or not they decide to use it, and I've told you this like 5 or 6 times, whether or not they decide to use it is a different story. We'll talk about the second part of the formula, but I think the first part of the formula is, hey, we can highlight some of these, grassroots tracks where the fans are showing up every weekend. It's a religion to go to those places. I mean, if you go to a Bowman Gray race, they talked about it on TV all the time. It was kind of annoying, but they were not lying. When you go to those modified races, you're either a Brown fan or a Myers fan. There's no in between. And it's just crazy to watch, man. I mean, people have their allegiances there. They sit in their same seats when they go to that place, and it's a whole different ball game when you go to a race there. And so, as bad as Fox was with everything else, I will give them kudos to that. But yeah, to piggyback on I don't want to keep burying Fox, and that's a dead dog that's been beat for a few years. But I'll say what summed it up for me was when they were sitting there interviewing Burt Myers and asking him about the wreck with Ricky Stenhouse. And the first replay they show him is from out of turn 4 where you can't even see the car. Like, you can't even see what happens. And he's like, yeah, I don't really know. This is not a good replay to make us. Like, it was the funniest. I was sitting there dying laughing. I thought it was so funny because, he's like, I'd love to see a replay. And they're like, oh, here's a replay. Let's show you the worst one we have. Like, in the truck. Yeah.
Hopefully more people will start calling them out for that stuff because, if Fox can get back to 50% of what it was in the golden years we always talk about, it would be great right now. So,
man, I just say, like, a track like that, and with the technology we have these days, you don't need the Goodyear blimp. Like, we have drones, all right? Like, a track that small at that size, and they had the camera angles because we saw it. I don't think anybody at home would have complained if they just run the camera from the drone and just show like an overhead view where you could see the whole track.
What was remind me? What was the racing league that Tony Stewart and them did?
Oh, the SRX.
SRX, that's it,
yeah.
Dude. One of my favorite things, and I remember I texted one of our buddies about it the night I saw it years ago before they had to cancel that. Was they would always, when they come back from commercial, they would have that drone fly over the cars.
Right over the cars as they restarted. Yes.
Yeah, and I always said, I was like, could you imagine that? Like, just picture yourself, put yourself in your seat. Daytona 500 coming up. Put yourself in your seat at home, and just imagine seeing that on your TV. Them cars taking the green flag and the drone just flying over top. Like, how
cool. I just think, in their defense, I think it's a big safety thing for them. I mean, the last thing you would want is for them to drop the green flag on the Daytona 500 and then the drone cop out and, like, they have to go under caution right away. It would be hysterical. Probably the most Fox thing ever to happen, but it would look very sick.
It would look. Yep.
Yep. So let's talk about the Clash, the main event itself. I was intrigued, man. It was a good event. I mean, Chase Elliott, hands down, best car. It was one of those races where, kind of what we were talking about, the Xfinity races that we went to. You had a dominant car, but it didn't take away from watching everything else. I mean, you had Ryan Blaney start dead last and end up finishing second, and he did it working through the field with his car in one piece. Like, these guys run up toward the front, their cars are destroyed. Blaney comes from the rear, he doesn't even have a scratch on it.
Clean.
It was clean, and what that told me is, we talk about this second half of the formula, it's there. It's there. And I'm going to tell you why it's there. One, they finally got a good tire. This was the tire they ran at Martinsville in the fall. I still think they can get a little bit more aggressive with it. But we saw it in Martinsville in the fall. There was some good wear because you could visibly see it on the track. You could see the cars adjusting to it. I think the whole race manipulation thing, as you and I talked about the other day, probably took away from what you really could have had there. You didn't have that in this one. There was some good tire wear. And then the biggest thing, man, there was no shifting. Like, there was no shifting at all. And I haven't heard that talked about enough.
Yeah.
Personally, because where you see it in Martinsville, what you see at Bristol, and I guess Phoenix and even Richmond for that. They go into these turns. Like, these guys are good. All right, let's not take anything away. They're really good race car drivers. But they go into the turns, man, and they just downshift. And at that, to me, that's what separates who's good and who's great at short track racing. And so you saw it at Bowman Gray. They didn't have that lifeline to drop back on. So if you overshot a turn, you were in trouble. Up the track you went, and see you later.
Yep. I mean, you look at Blaney on, trying to wheel, real chasing at the end of the race. He overran the turn, and I mean, so, and if you're not feathering that pedal and working that car, I mean, you're really gonna screw the pooch, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah. But it was a good race. I mean, honestly, it's the best product I've seen on a short track in the new gen cars and in the next gen cars.
I I would agree. Yep, I would agree. I love the tire fall off. I think it gave a really good product on the track, and everything that I've read this week, from the driver standpoint, they really liked it. They really enjoyed it. I mean, I think Denny even referenced it on this podcast, about, the tire.
Hmm.
And so, but yeah, I thought it was a great race. Like I said, I hope they bring it back, whether it's for the All-Star race or whether it's for another clash. I think there's a little bit more they can do, to make it even better. Um, but the racing was, I mean, that's probably some of the best cup racing, like you said, on a short track that we've seen in, what, 3 years?
So I guess this is year 4.
Yeah.
Yep,
That's,
that's
so you're
crazy.
going into year 4 of the new gen car, and I guess we could go ahead and call it Courage Gen now. So,
We'll
uh,
see. We'll see how that. Let's talk after they go to Phoenix here in like week 3. I know they're still pushing these option tires. I'm not a fan of that, man.
I'm
One way
not
or
even,
another, that I feel like they're trying to copy F1 too much with that, and they don't need to do that, man. They don't need to do
no.
that. The NASCAR product's strong enough. We don't go chase. Don't go
Yeah,
chase.
be
And
be what made you, and that's what we talked about too with the grassroots.
yeah,
You've had that conversation many a times of, getting back to your grassroots, do the things that made you popular, when you hit your peak.
and you want to
And
know what's something, Cody? I'll tell you this: the first time I ever went to Bowman Gray was the first time I ever saw a choose, that they do now. I don't know if it started at Bowman Gray. Don't quote me on that, but I imagine that track having, and they had a choose cone. That's how they did there, and it was a huge thing, man. Like, this little dude would come running out behind the flag stand after the cars went by and set this cone out on the track, and that's how everybody chose if they wanted inside or outside. And so, NASCAR's adopted that, and and I know that was big from grassroots stuff, and that's actually turned out to be pretty good. I know some people,
oh
like,
yeah,
your purists aren't fans of it, but I'm like, it adds some drama, especially this past weekend, because you was like, who's gonna have the
who's gonna take?
guts
Yep,
to go take that outside lane and see if it'll
yep.
work? And yeah, no, it was great. Overall, 2 thumbs up. I had a feeling it was going to be good. I was probably hyping it up a little too much, hoping it just wasn't going to let it down. I know in our group chat, you probably saw me like I was kind of like a kid on Christmas, but Bowman Gray delivers, man. Like, that place has never let me down.
Yeah,
Never
no,
let me
I
down.
agree.
So hopefully, one of the podcasts we'll have later this year, reactions from Cody going to his first Bowman Gray race, getting to experience not only the racing but the extracurriculars that happen at Bowman Gray outside of the racing is the best way to put it. I just say I've never come back from a night at that track and did not have one of the craziest stories, to tell. That's for sure. So that was good. Well, I think that'll wrap up stage 2. So let's move into the final stage here, Cody. We're 30 minutes into this thing at this point. 2025 predictions. So let's start here. What are you most looking forward to for this upcoming season?
I'm really looking forward to seeing what these new cars, but can do on the short tracks. That's where my biggest intrigue is for the entire season. I want to see passing. I want to see, bump and runs. I want to be able to see, you know, a lot of fall off. When these guys are making long green flag runs, that's what I want to see. So, because once again, my theme, I thought the thing about this, my word for the season is grassroots, and
Hmm.
so like for me, it's when we take in both Martinsville races this year, when they go to Richmond, when they go back to Bristol, um, I want to see good racing. I want to see hard racing. That we grew up, loving, and um, so that's really what I'm looking forward to this year. Um, I think, you know, of course, we didn't. None of us really got to see any playoff changes that a lot of people talked about. A lot of fans, wanted
I
and
think that's
clamored
coming
for.
though. I do
I
think
think
it's
it is
coming.
too.
Yeah.
So I am intrigued to hear about that throughout the season, because I think it's gonna rear its head consistently throughout the season.
Hmm.
So I'm intrigued to see what people have to say if it does rear its head during the season this year, because a little pressure on NASCAR never hurt.
Yeah. I think for me, what I'm like watching the most, there's a lot of new guys and new cars this year. I mean, you had teams closing the doors. You've got, new guys working their way up. Guys are switching cars. It's crazy, the shift. So watching some of the new guys, I think you and I both are probably most intrigued to watch Shane Vengisbergen. And he's
SVG,
probably going to make
baby.
the playoffs. He's going to win one of the road course races. Like, I'll be shocked if he doesn't. But, I mean, it's, you never know what can happen. But, like, he's held his own at Martinsville. He held his own at Bowman Gray. He's a really good driver, man.
I
Like,
mean,
honestly, the dude can drive a car.
he can.
And so it'll be interesting watching him. I'm intrigued for that. I think one thing people aren't talking about enough, and maybe I'm just making a bigger deal out of it. I'm interested to see what happens with Denny Hamlin throughout this year. He just re-signed a contract with Joe Gibbs the other year, but he's kind of on this, and they never released how long that contract was. By the way, if they did, I missed it. They said long term, but I don't know. This day and age, more than 1 year is long term. But
Yeah.
like he's kind of following a similar track to what happened with Kyle Busch, where sponsorship starts to leave. You're like, why? These are good drivers. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Um, and it's just real quiet on the front about it. And then next thing you know, they're not at JGR anymore. Now, Denny's positioned himself way differently than Kyle was, because Denny has something to fall back on if he wants to. They have the alliance with Joe Gibbs, so it's a little different, and with Toyota involved and everything there. But that's one thing I'm watching as well. It's going to be interesting to see the fact that we didn't find out who his Daytona, like he didn't have a Daytona 500 sponsor till last week, is wild. Like, this dude's won the
Yeah.
Daytona 500 3 times,
I mean,
and
he's been
it
one of
took
your
him 2 weeks.
championship favorite.
Yeah, he took him 2 weeks before the biggest race of the year to find a sponsor for it. Come on, either. I mean, I know it's rough getting sponsors out there for NASCAR right now, but
We've
uh,
talked about it. We
is it a
me and you both
JGR
agree.
thing? Like, that's what
Yeah,
I'm starting to wonder. Is it a
yeah.
JGR thing?
Me and you both agree, because I if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I mean, Kyle Busch at the time when that happened, he was probably, let's be honest, he was probably the biggest name in the motorsports. I mean,
Yeah, he was up there.
you
You were
know,
starting that transition into Kyle Larson for sure,
he
but yeah,
was,
he was still. Yeah,
Kyle was still, the guy. And, to lose M&M's and to lose, I mean, those sponsors, uh, so
and not to throw it out there, and I think I sent you it, but there's one driver who took a picture with the helmet that, if I'm not mistaken, had some M&M characters on it. So
did I miss that?
I can't remember if I sent that to you or not, but
No.
we'll see. There's a chance that might make its way back, and if it does this year, I got questions. Like, I got
Yeah.
questions that I'm not going to get the answers to, but I got questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think my last thing I'm looking forward to is, can NASCAR not fumble the momentum this year? We've talked about this. You came off of COVID, or during COVID, NASCAR's first sport back. All right, they had probably the most momentum that they've had since I can remember. I mean, years.
2015,
Yeah, dude. Like,
2016, maybe.
we went to my family, my brother, my dad, and I went to the NASCAR All Star race in Bristol during the COVID year. Dude, my brother hadn't liked NASCAR since he was like 10, 11, 12 years old. My brother's 40 years old now. I'm telling him, like, me and dad are thinking of going. He's like, oh, really? I want to come. He just wanted something to do. Like, people just wanted to get out of the house, and that was on. But he enjoyed it. He said, it's like, yeah, that was a good time. I don't know if he's still watching it or not. Probably not. But you know what I mean? Like, they had so much momentum, and they fumbled it, man. They fumbled it so bad because they wanted to rush these new cars. They rushed these new cars, and they weren't ready yet. And then they just made some stupid decisions. I don't want to say stupid, just not wise decisions along the way, and so many different things that we could talk hours about. But now it's like, okay, hey, they got momentum again. I mean, the ratings for the Clash was phenomenal. I want to say it was pushing 4 million, one of the highest
Yeah,
events they've had in a long time. Can they carry that
mine's
momentum into Daytona?
Yep.
And even if Fox isn't doing the best job that they can, is the product still going to be there? The last thing I want to do next Sunday is turn the freaking race on, and they're running 175 miles an hour to save fuel again during the Daytona 500. Like, NASCAR needs to tell these guys, like, say it off camera, say it off the record, but tell them to stop that crap. Like, no one wants to see it.
Yeah, it's not. That's not what's best for business. And
Yep.
what's best for business is those guys going out there running 200 miles an hour and trying to win the Daytona 500 and take the biggest prize home. Like
Yep.
that's what it's for. So let's
I
get out
agree.
of the fuel. Let's get out of the fuel miles saving. If you want to do that on some mile and a halves, okay, fine. We've always had that in
Yeah.
racing. But super speedways, I don't want to hear nothing about no saving gas.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
unless you're cutting your car on and off during caution.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's the way we're going. The only way they can do it is just changing the stage lengths, I believe, to just work that math. But even then, I mean, these guys are so smart, man. These crew chiefs are just like, they're really
They're
smart. Someone's
They've
going to
got
figure a way
everything.
out, and as soon as one person figures it out, everyone does. So
They've got everything calculated down to a T.
exactly. So who? Let me ask you this: who is the one driver? And we can't say SVG because he's one. Who's the one driver who hasn't won a Cup Series race this year that you think will?
So, yeah, I was going to ask you the same question. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say Josh Berry and the 21 Wood Brothers.
Okay.
That's where I'm going.
Well, I will tell you mine, and you probably won't be surprised because when we get to the next section, I'm going to tell you someone who I think makes the playoffs this year. I'm going Ty Gibbs. He didn't show too good in the Clash, but he had a strong car, and he's been right there. Like he's been right there. He's knocking on the door. This is his third,
Second full time. Second full
full
time.
time, really 2.5. So he's
Yeah.
had 2.5 because he filled in for Kurt Busch after he had his concussion. So I think it's I don't want to say it's put up or shut up time for Ty because he's not been running bad, but I think it's to the point where he takes the next step. I'm trying to think of first time drivers too. I think to watch out. I think Carson Hocevar could be one that could win a
We
race
talked
this
about
year.
him the other night. Let's see, Carson.
He's definitely started to look good. And then at some point, Noah Gregson's going to win a race.
Yeah.
At some point.
I think he's going to do well with his new team this year. He was on my other list with Josh Berry
Yeah.
to win a race, and so I like that pick. I like that too.
All right. Driver to make the playoffs that people least expect.
All right, so we can't say SVG, right? That's what we've already ruled.
I think everyone expects him to make the playoffs, honestly, because
Yeah,
you
just about
got
winning
to
a road
figure
course.
he's going to win at least one road course race.
The people less expect.
You want me to
know,
go first?
No, I'm gonna say it because I mean you just said his name, but I think Noah Gregson.
Hmm.
Like I think he can run consistent. I think he can, you know, I think he can do really well with his new team. And I think he could probably make the playoffs.
I will say I'm going to cheat. I'm going to kind of just follow what I did last time. I think Ty Gibbs makes the playoffs this year. I think Carson Hocevar makes it too. I mean, dude from the back end of the season last year was running really good.
He was.
Also, wouldn't I think Bubba makes it this year? I know he's kind of always been on the edge, but he's starting to learn how to run smart. And we were texting about that, so it wouldn't surprise me if he gets in. I mean, if he wins, he's in. But
I agree with that too. And me and you talked the other night. You know, I think Bubba wins a race this year too. Like,
yeah,
I think he wins a race and gets in that way.
Yeah.
But he's consistently been better every year. You know, he's I think I'm pretty sure he's got a new crew chief this year too.
yeah, he does.
And I think that crew chief is going to get a lot more out of Bubba. And Bubba's a parent now, so I think he's a little more humble than he has been in the past. I think he's a little more level-headed, and he's seeing the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And he really started to show that last year too. So
Yep.
I'm excited to watch him this year.
You think Chase Briscoe makes it in the 19?
It's hard to count a JGR car out because they're usually really good, and Toyota brings such good products. So, I mean, I could see it.
I mean,
I could see it.
if he's in, then they got a pretty good shot at putting all 4 cars in.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Now, whether you agree the champion now is a true champion or not, we'll leave that for another
time.
another day. your champion for 2025?
My champion. I told you we're gonna do dark horse after this because I want to ask
Okay.
you that question because we
Okay.
talked about that the other night. But I do think this year, um, I'm going probably going chalk. But I think Chase Elliott. I think he gets back on top. Um, he had the most consistent season last year outside of Christopher Bale. Um, so he ran good at the Clash. I think that team has come with a renewed focus. He was really devastated last season to not make the chase
Hmm.
or not make the Final Four. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I think he comes back, and I really think he dominates this year. I'm going to be honest. I think he goes out there and he's on a mission.
Yeah, he definitely is. You know, a couple years ago with the injury, last year they got back on track, and then never a bad thing to start the year off with the momentum that they have right now, for sure. And the thing is, like, I think what played in Chase's favor so much with the old cars, he was so good on road
Road
courses.
courses. Yep.
And I don't know how much of that has changed with the new cars versus how much of some of these road course specialists have come in. But Chase has gotten. I mean, he was never bad on ovals, but he's got better, much better over the last couple of years. And so, yeah, I can see that. I'm going to go Tyler Reddick. He was in the Final Four last year. That team is making some strides, and that dude's bad. Like he's good, man. He's 5'2" on a good day, but he can drive a race car, man. So I'm going Tyler Reddick.
I like it.
Yeah. All right.
So, who would you say is your dark horse to win the championship?
To make the championship, how about we say
No.
to make?
Okay, that's fair enough. Fair
How
enough.
about we say to
We'll do
make?
to make the Final Four.
I'm going out there because of the tracks that are on these last few in the last few stages are playoff stages. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
I'm going to really go out there. SVG. There's some
Okay.
road courses in there. If he
Yeah.
gets in there, wins a couple of them, he's shown he's pretty good at Martinsville.
Yeah.
Anything can happen at plate race. He'd go to Talladega. He's got the Roval to work with. I mean, it's not honestly like he got in the final. He was in the Final Four Xfinity last year, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or he was like right there at
I'd
it.
have to go look that up.
I'd have to go look at, but like he was in it. It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't.
I like it. I like
That's
it.
my dark horse for the Final Four.
Man, that's a real dark horse. Like that's
Yeah.
we've said make the playoffs, but man, you're taking full
I
swing.
just like the way that it lays out, man. Like it plays in his
Yeah.
favor. Kind of to like the last two
Well,
rounds. The last two rounds might get difficult. But I think he could. I think realistically, if he's in the playoffs, he can make the round of 8. Like I really do feel like he can make the round of 8, and then you get there.
just win and move on.
I mean, you got God, what are the last 3? I'm gonna pull the schedule up while you do yours.
Yep.
I need the
So,
schedule. I can't because then they. I'm pretty sure they changed it around a little this year.
so my dark horse for the championship is Chris Buescher. I think he makes the Final Four.
Mm,
I think he came really close. He had a lot of, I mean, golly, if I'm not mistaken, he had the closest finish in NASCAR history last year.
yeah.
And I mean, I think Brad has just continued to take that team to higher and higher levels. And Chris is right there. I mean, to be fair, Chris probably ran the first half and middle part of the season better than Brad did last year. And then Brad really started to pick up. And I mean, Chris kind of, flamed out at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But
That team's got some good momentum.
yeah, so I think he ran well at the Clash. I think, I really feel like he's going to be rejuvenated. He's going to be on a mission to, of course, win a race this year because he comes so close. I think 2 or 3 times last year. So I think if he wins, I think he can make that Final Four.
Yep. So the round of 12, your 3 tracks in that are New Hampshire, Kansas, and the Roval. So let's say SVG gets through there, okay?
Yep.
And actually, I take that back. So that's the only road course on the playoffs this year is the Roval. So
Okay.
we'll see, but
What's the
if
next 3?
if he gets into the round of 8, you got Vegas, Talladega, and Martinsville.
Yeah, we know anybody can win the Talladega.
Yeah, I don't see him winning at Vegas. SVG just here's the thing: if Logano makes the during round of 8, he usually goes out and wins Vegas. Like whenever he makes round of 8, I swear he just goes and wins Vegas and gets in. But like anything can happen at a super speedway, and he's run good enough at Martinsville recently. Like I can see, it's a dark horse, but I don't know. I might eat these words. It'll come. It'll come to October, and I'm like, why? Why did I say that? But I don't know. Man,
right.
I just feel.
We need to write these down, and then at the Final Four, we need to come back. At the end of the season, we need to come back to our predictions, or maybe before the playoffs, we'll come back to our predictions.
Yep, I agree. So, well, hey man, I think it's a good place to stop. So yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed the first episode we've had here tonight. Again, we're gonna have the socials out soon. I can't tell you what it is right now because I'm still working to put them together. But on the next one, we'll let you know where you can follow us and all that. Appreciate everybody's support. Definitely drop a comment, drop a like if you can. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Cody, appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you as always.
All right, man.